What's happening, YouTube? It's Rich from Virginia Beach. It is, let's see, 28th, 29th of September, October. Something like that. Sunday. And my last video I made on 9 September 2024. It was called Drive and Talk. And in that video I talked about income tax that I had an issue on from 2021, but it kind of bled over from property tax. Specific to property on my home, specifically the property on my home in Virginia Beach where I live, and how it spilled over and I had to pay off my mortgage, and because I paid off my mortgage I paid a lot of income tax, and I ended up getting that back. I had to fight for it. Nothing comes for free anymore. But this one kind of goes hand in hand with that. Back in 2009, I bought an acre of property at Lake Gaston in Halifax County, North Carolina. Now, that was kind of bought that as an investment property. I thought the property value was going to go way up because the lake is only so big. There's only so much property around it, and I thought it was going to go up exponentially. Well, it didn't. So I didn't really pay that much for it. I think I paid like $24,000 for it. I put $12,000 down, and over the course of a year, I paid $1,000 a month and paid the rest of it off. So I didn't really have a mortgage on it. It was kind of like a loan with the real estate company. It wasn't a mortgage loan. I didn't have to pay a whole ton of interest. It's a forested 1 acre lot of property. There's nothing on it, no structures, no nothing. So the property tax I was getting hit for every year was about $140 a month. Wasn't really a lot. And it wasn't that I couldn't pay $140 a year in property tax. But I actually did pay it until about 2020, when I start figuring out the fraud that this property tax scheme is. And I found that out at the same time I found out the fraud that was going on in Virginia Beach with the home and the property that I live on. It's all the same, folks. North Carolina, Virginia, even though they're two separate states, two separate legislatures, they all have to conform with the federal Constitution. Okay? The state can grant more rights than the federal Constitution grants. It can do that. And some states do. And some states are a little better than others. But they can't take away a right that is recognized by the the United States of America Constitution. They can't do it. They can, actually the states don't give you rights. They can recognize more rights than what's in the federal Constitution, because they also recognize that the states don't give the people their rights. Make sure you keep that straight in your head. The government does not grant the people rights. That's a very important thing to remember. So anyway, just walk you through this whole story. So long about 2020 rolls around, and I recognize this fraudulent scheme they're doing on taxing us for the right to own property. And it's all 50 states. It's all the same. The federal Constitution lays out very clear that the people have a right to acquire, possess, and protect property. That's a right. That's not a privilege. That's not a benefit. That's not something the government bestows upon the people and can therefore take from them. It can't do it. Ever since the Revolutionary War, when the American colonists picked up their muskets and fought off the then most powerful army in the world, the British, who was under rule of King George III and charged us tax on everything. And we got tired of it. We picked up our muskets and we kicked their asses off our land. We became a republic, a constitutional republic. This is not a feudal society. This is not a monarch. This is a constitutional republic where the people, given the government certain powers, duties, responsibilities. The people didn't give the government rights. We gave the government duties and responsibilities, and those duties and responsibilities all revolve around protecting the rights of the people and establishing a civilized society. That's what a constitutional republic is supposed to be. Okay? We don't owe feudal duties to some government agency because we acquire and purchase property. Not for that alone. Now, it depends on what we do with that property. Okay? If we start asking for privileges like a business license, for an example, and this is a very real situation. It happens a lot. People want to run a business out of their home. There's nothing wrong with doing that. That's perfectly lawful to do that. There are some benefits to doing that. You can earn income. You can make a decent living by running a good business out of your property, out of your home, or a separate property that you buy. You could buy a property that already has a structure on it, a building. It's already zoned for commercial, and you set up a business there. That's fine too. We have people. We can engage in the privilege of conducting business. That is a privilege granted by the local government. You apply for a business license and you're granted that privilege. Well, with that privilege comes strings attached in the form of taxation, which is lawful to do. It's lawful to have taxation on the privilege of conducting a business. That's the way it's set up. That's the way it goes. And that's acceptable. That's normal. That's the way business is conducted in America. And that's fine. If you're a business person, you understand this. This isn't anything new. You pay income tax on your income that you earn from that business. And you pay property tax on the property that you use to earn that income from that business. You business guys and gals know that. That's not a secret. But what a lot of people don't understand is that can only apply if you're conducting said business and using said property to do so. The property that you acquire and you purchase for you or you and your family or you and whomever you choose to use that property to live on, and you're not conducting any business, there's no taxable status. There's no nexus for a property tax on that property because the people have a right to possess and own that property. Government can't even come on that property, can't even step foot on it unless they have a warrant lawfully obtained according to the rules that the legislature passed. Okay? If they obtain a lawful warrant to come on your property for some reason, they can certainly do that. And that's okay. That's part of due process of law. And that's the main thing I want to talk about, is the due process of law. A lot of people have no idea what that means. And there's a good reason for that. Is because it means many things. Due process of law is not one thing. It's many things. I'll refer to it as a process. It's due process of law. People, men and women of this country have rights. We also have responsibilities to each other, but I'm not going to get into that. but just know that exists as well. But we have certain rights that the government has recognized as given to us by our Creator. Read the Declaration of Independence. Now, the Declaration of Independence is not a law document, so to speak. It doesn't dictate any form of law, but it gives you a good perspective of how this country was formed and where the law actually comes from and why we have it. And some of the things that King George was doing to the colonists back then, that the colonists decided was abhorrent and was against we the people. And they got tired of it. Hence the Revolutionary War. I spoke about that earlier. However, we have a right to own property. If we can acquire it by lawful means we pay for it or we trade something for it or it's a gift to us. However, we lawfully obtain property. And we're not using that property for a business. And we just live there. We have a house there. We're raising our family there. There is no lawful method with which any local or federal government can tax that property for simply owning it and possessing it. And when you have a house and you're raising your family on property, that's all you're doing. You're living there by right. If you obtain that property legally, you have a right to own it. That is not in dispute. It shouldn't be. It's very clear that in America, property ownership is allodial, which means you don't owe a feudal duty for owning that property. You just don't. You don't pay the king to rent the property. Property ownership in America is allodial. You pay for it, it's yours, and with that comes rights. And those rights are to protect that property. You have the right to exclude anybody else from that property that you desire. You can let anybody enter your property that you desire. You have complete and total control over that property. It's not the control of the government. They can't come on and say, oh, you need a permit to do this. Bullshit. You don't need a fucking permit to do anything with your property as long as you're not creating a hazard which violates someone else's rights. If you do that, then that person that you used your property to violate their rights has a legitimate gripe. They can invest a court with jurisdiction to hear that matter and to fix it. If you guys can't work it out amongst yourselves like human beings should be doing, instead of taking every little nickel-dime controversy and bringing it into the public for resolution, if you can't work it out on your own, which I highly suggest you do, since we are civilized people living in a civilized community, work it out amongst ourselves. Don't bring it into public for controversy. Make it work between yourselves. If you have a problem with your neighbor, talk to your neighbor. Work it out. That's the problem nowadays. Nobody wants to talk to the other person and work out a grievance they may have or a dispute they may have and come to terms. Jesus, how freaking hard is that? We used to be able to do that. I don't have a single problem with any of my neighbors. I get along with all of them. We all wave at each other as we go up and down the street. I think that's how we are supposed to get along. We're supposed to be intelligent people. Intelligent people know how to communicate with each other. If my neighbor is throwing a bunch of trash in my yard and I don't like it, and I'm tired of picking it up all the time because I don't want a junky yard, what am I going to do? I'm going to go talk to my neighbor. Hey, dude. Hey, is there any way you can find another method to dispose of your trash other than throwing it in my yard? Can we work something out? I won't throw my trash in your yard if you don't throw yours in mine. Can we just come to that agreement? I mean, Jesus, doesn't that make sense? Instead of calling the police on your neighbors and bringing a private dispute into the public for all to see, air out your dirty laundry in public? Really? Is this the Jerry Springer show? Do we all want to act like a bunch of Jerry Springer participants? I would hope not. I would hope not all of us devolved into those animals who don't have a damn 2 brain cells in their head to rub together. I mean, really? Really? Is that how society is devolved into Jerry Springer participants? So anyway, that's the gist of what I'm talking about today. And I wanted to explain a situation that I'm dealing with my property in Halifax County, North Carolina. Doris B. Hawkins, who is the head assessor and the property tax collector, whom I've been dealing with and been asking her questions for the last 4 years. You know, every time I would get a tax bill, I would pay it from 2009 to 2020. I always paid them on time. I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't question it like most of you people. You don't question it. You don't want to create any problems, so you just pay it. And it goes away and you don't hear about it for another year, right? That's what most people do. And I get that. Most people don't like controversy. I don't particularly like controversy either. But something I like even less is being taken advantage of. I enjoy that even less. So anyway, what happened was, I was asking Doris Hawkins from Halifax County, North Carolina, all these questions, because when I started questioning, I started looking up the North Carolina general statutes. Even though I don't live there, my property's there. So, you know, I got to deal with them people and their rules and whatnot. I looked it up, and lo and behold, it's damn near the same as Virginia. We're right next door. We share a land border. But I stopped paying it one year in 2020, and I sent them a letter asking simple questions like, you know, what part of the North Carolina Constitution gave the county a right to tax people's right to own property? Can you please point that out to me? And can you please provide me a copy of my signed assessment where I assessed the value of my own property and submitted it? Can you please provide this information? Once this information is received and it's acceptable, I'll be glad to pay this. I'm not refusing to pay anything. I would just, you know, like some verification that this is a legit bill, that this is a legit obligation. I went in there with honor. I didn't go in there and just slam them with a bunch of, you know, my hypothesis or my assumptions. I started asking questions, and I started requesting documents that they need to have on file to create the assessment in the first place. Well, guess what? They never responded to my records request, which they're required to do by North Carolina law. All 50 states have a public records type of law where if you're one of the people, and, you know, because everything government does is public. It's public information. The people have a right to see this stuff. Because who's in charge of the government? The frickin' people. The people established the government. We, the people, are supposed to be keeping an eye on everything they do. Therefore, we made sure that all of their records and all of their activity is made public. Otherwise, Otherwise, how can we keep charge of our public servants and keep an eye on what they do? We wouldn't be able to do that unless we make all their stuff public. And we gave ourselves access to that. Or actually, the people determined that the people has made it policy that the government is to make this information available to us, either to come in and inspect the records or to make copies of the records and provide them to us. Basically at no cost if it's not a huge burden to produce this stuff. Now, if they got to go back and do a bunch of research and run off 1,000 copies of a bunch of records, they're going to charge you for it, which they should. But if it's just a copy of 1 or 2 documents, they can't charge you for that. So every state in the union has a public records request statute somewhere buried in all their code or their statute that the state legislature has to authorize because the people demand that. So they didn't provide it. Now, North Carolina records request law is very mealy. There's no teeth in it. It doesn't list a punishment for not doing what they're required to do. So there's, I can't really go after them for that. I could. But the bottom line is they didn't provide the documents they're required to have in order to provide a lawful assessment of my property. Because there has to be some business activity. And where there's business activity, there are records. You do not conduct business without records. Any business owner will tell you that. And any tax collector of any municipality, of any locality, or the state, or the feds, or whatever, they also know there's business records involved with conducting business. This is not a secret. So, since they didn't have any of the documents they're required to have, because I have no business on my property, they can't lawfully charge me a tax for it, yet they still do. All 50 states do this. You must look into your state taxing ordinance or your state taxing codes. You're going to find out they're well written. They're written to deceive you. They use words like taxpayer, person, fiduciary. Well, look up the definition of these words. You're going to find out if you're not conducting business with your property, you're none of these terms. You're not a taxpayer. You're not a person. So look all this up. So anyway, lo and behold, after 4 years, I get certified mail from M. Glenn Rawlins, who I had dealings with over the last 4 years, because he is the county attorney. A fucking attorney. My favorite people, bar members, who distort and obfuscate everything and will never admit the truth. Even if you stick it in their face and slap them around with it, they'll never admit it. They can't. Because if they do, the whole house of cards is going to come tumbling down. Now, I'm not even sure if some of these ignorant fucks even know what they're doing. I think there's some of them are just so ignorant, they only know policy, practice, and procedure. They don't really know what the law is and how it's written and how to interpret it. Because you have to use the rules of statutory interpretation and the rule of statutory construction. Statutes or state codes have to be constructed in a certain way. And the legislature tells you what that way is. How they must be created and how they must be interpreted. And you have to become very familiar with that, or you won't know how to read a statute properly. You're going to misread a statute. And when you misread a statute, you don't get the true meaning and the gist of it. You have to understand the gist of the statute and the authority with which it carries, or you won't know how to apply it properly. So anyway, when did I receive this? What's the postmark on this? I got the green card for this, by the way, and I never turned it in. September 17th. They served me notice and a summons via mail. U.S. Postal Service. Well, that's not the way you serve a summons on one of the people. You can get away with serving a business like that because a business doesn't have the same rights the people have. The people have a right to due process of law, and part of that is proper service of process. Where a human being walks up to your address or where you work or wherever they can get a hold of you and ask, are you so-and-so? And you say yes. And they said, here is the complaint. Here is the summons. Sir or madam, you have been served. And that's your legal notice that someone is bringing a lawful action against you and that your presence is requested at this certain place at this certain time to give you an opportunity to be heard, to understand who's coming after you, what they're coming after you with, meaning the complaint, so you understand all of these things. You have to understand all of these things. You have a due process right to understand who's coming after you. You have to have ample opportunity to be able to defend yourself. You have a right to call witnesses in your favor. You have a right to not speak and incriminate yourself, to give evidence that incriminates yourself. All of these are due process rights that the people have. Now, businesses and corporations don't have these rights, but the people do. You can't serve notice in the mail to a man or a woman in their personal capacity. You just can't do it. It's not the way it works. That violates my due process rights as a man, as one of the people, because I possess the right of due process of law, which includes proper notice. This is not proper notice. But anyway, what this mail contained, it said it was a summons, but it didn't summons me anywhere. It didn't summons me to a court. There wasn't a date. There wasn't a time. There wasn't a place. It just said summons. It didn't say where or when, or that I'm required to be anywhere at any certain place. It didn't make any sense at all to me. And there was kind of a complaint, but not really a complaint. It said basically that they're moving against me, and basically they're going to do a fire sale on my property for not paying property taxes. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, oh, okay. And so, and it even said the statute. So I'm like, okay, let me read this statute. Let me become familiar with it. So I looked at all the paperwork. The paperwork's complete bullshit. There is no way you can summon somebody to court through the mail. So I got to reading it, and this statute is for businesses. Not for the people to be served and action be taken. Anyway, what they were trying to do have to excuse me for a second. I'm in an area I'm not that familiar with. Oh, there it is. Oh, this makes it difficult. So anyway, they're trying to move this statute against me, which is for supposed to be for corporations and businesses, because again, so I looked it up. I even called the clerk of that court. It's the Superior Court of Halifax County, North Carolina. And they're saying they're going to do an ex parte, not even a hearing. They're going to take some sort of ex parte action against me to sell my property without even me being there. Can you can you imagine that? They're going to take someone's property. They can't prove that the tax they're claiming is even legal or lawful, or that they have the authority to do what they're doing. They can't prove any of that. And now they're taking this action upon me to steal my property with absolutely no due process of law whatsoever. So I'm reading this statute and I'm looking at it, and there is a thing on this statute that says that if you contest any of this, you can put in a motion to set aside the entire action, because I'm trying to see something here. I'm trying to find this place called Docktails, and I don't see it. I see Rockefellers. Rudy's. I don't see this place called Docktails where Amanda works. So I read this, that I could put in a motion to have it set aside if there is a constitutional controversy with this action being taken. Well, hell yes, there's a controversy with this action being taken. It's not a lawful thing to do to strip one of the people of their right to own property when you can't even prove this tax is a valid tax. The whole damn thing is a constitutional violation or a conflict with the Constitution. The whole thing. The whole damn thing is a constitutional nightmare. It can't pass any constitutional muster on any point. So I went through and I dug through the Constitution, and I dug through the entire statute they're trying to move against me, and I found 21 points of constitutional controversy. With, first, they're going to do an ex parte hearing, which means I don't even have to be there. They can just take my property, my right to own my property from me that I lawfully purchased, and take it from me without even a judicial proceeding. Can you imagine? And I get a phone call. Jesus. Richie, I'm making a video. So, yeah, they're trying to do all of this stuff against me. I don't even have to appear, and they're just going to take my property from me with absolutely no verification, no validation, all these constitutional problems that they're creating for themselves. And oh, by the way, I don't have to be there. So anyway, and I sent it registered mail, and I sent it right to the damn clerk of the Superior Court, of the one that's probably was supposed to eventually sign this order that the sheriff can sell my property. sell it right out from under me without me even being there. So you can probably imagine that I had a lot to say. It was like a 9 or 10 page motion to set aside this action. And it was very well written. And I sent it off registered mail. So I got the receipt. They received it about a week ago. I haven't heard anything back from them yet. This property is like a 3-hour drive, from where I live in Virginia Beach. So, it's not like I'm just going to go there every other day and check in and say, hey, how are you guys doing in this unlawful court thing you got going on? It's just not something I'm going to do. But this is the shit that they do. This is what they try to do. Now, if I did nothing, if I did absolutely nothing and just let all this happen like they want me to do, why is all of this road closure going on with no signs posted? So anyway, if I did absolutely nothing like they want me to do, they would go ahead and because they gave me notice and I didn't do anything about it, in law, if you do not respond and you acquiesce to whatever they send you, you're basically allowing it to happen. Well, you can't allow this shit to happen without intervening. And most of the time, they will send you paperwork telling you how they're doing stuff, what gives them the authority to do what they're doing, and all of this and that bullshit, right? Well, take that information that they send you and read that statute that they're using to come after you, and you're going to find out that doesn't apply to you. 9 times out of 10, the shit they're trying to do to you is not even written for you in the first place. It's not written for people. It's written for persons. They can't just take the people's property from them for no reason. They just can't do it, yet they try to do it all the time. Through taxation, through all of this shit. And they try to take your property from you. I mean, can you believe that? No hearing, no due process of law, not even proper service of process. Service through the frickin' mail. You can't do that to the people. So that's where I'm at on this. I haven't received any other paper, but if they follow the statute the way it's written and the way I wrote my motion to set aside this whole entire thing for 21 separate reasons, each one of which is good enough to set it aside, because there's a constitutional violation for everything that I pointed out. Each one is its own reason to set aside this entire motion. I gave them 21 of them. What do you think they're going to do? I'll tell you what I think they're going to do. I think they're going to ignore it. And I think they're going to try to move forward and do a sheriff's sale on property that they have no ownership or interest in. Absolutely none. I think that's what they're going to try to do. That's what these clowns always try to do. They ignore what you send them. They do it anyways. They're acting unlawful. They just think the law doesn't apply to them, and they're our public servants. and they're trying to take property from one of the people. They do this all the time. All over the entire United States they do this. And nobody stands up for themselves because they don't know, they don't read. Honestly, that's all it takes, is the ability to learn and understand how to read your state code, your state statute. You're going to figure out 99% of that shit doesn't even apply to the people. And it doesn't, damn sure can't abrogate our rights. The legislature can't take away your rights because it's already in the Constitution that, hey, the people have these rights. All your state actors take an oath to support the Constitution. They never take an oath to support the state statutes because they can't. They take an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They are the fucking domestic enemies. Our governments that are put there to protect our rights are trampling on them as if they never existed in the first place. How? Because it's their policy, practice, and procedure to do that. And we, the people, never challenge them. We need to be challenging these clowns. They think they have the right to violate our rights. They don't. They don't even have the authority, let alone a right. They don't have any rights. They have the authority that we gave them, and only that we gave them, via the Constitution. They have no more rights or authority than what the people gave them in our Constitution. That's how this works, folks. I'm going to keep you updated on this North Carolina deal because it's just egregious what these people think they can do. And being retired, it would be an interesting day for me to drive to Halifax County Superior Court clerk and talk to this lady in person, the shit that she's trying to pull on me. Because I sue every single one of them, the whole entire county. From the assessor to M. Glenn Rollins, the attorney, to the court clerk. We have every right to do that to these people when they overstep our boundaries and cause harm to one of the people. They're not allowed to go around harming the freaking people. We are the masters, they are the servants. And every now and then you have to remind them of that, because oh so often how they forget. And we've got the law and the Constitution on our side. No matter how they make it sound, and all the fluffy words they put in there, and all the obfuscation that they're doing, we, the people, have the law on our side. The Constitution is on our side. Dude, get that fucking bike moving. So that's the whole idea of this video. I want people to understand these people will fuck with you and try to take advantage of you and twist words around and try to use statutes or code against you where it doesn't even apply. you're not one of the subjects where this code would even apply to you in the first place. Unless you're engaged in commercial activity, then it may apply. It could very well apply to you if you're engaged in commercial activity. Then some of these codes would become applicable. So you just have to know what you're doing, know what your status is, know what you're engaged in, and the repercussions that come along with being engaged in commercial activity. Engaging in business is a privilege. I'm not going to go to IHOP today. I was disappointed in IHOP last time in my last video. I didn't get my damn hash browns. I got silly ass pancakes. I haven't really liked pancakes since I've been about 12 years old. I'm 60. That was a long time ago. You know, they don't even make real syrup anymore. It's all this corn syrup shit that they put in there now. I gave Rowan, this kid, Amanda's son, who used to live with me. I went to the store because he likes waffles. My grandson likes waffles and pancakes. They like all that sweet shit. So I'm like, you know what? Instead of giving them like this Aunt Jemima shit, bullshit corn syrup, I'm going to get them some real maple syrup. So I got this thing in a glass jar of real maple syrup, and I didn't tell them about it. So I soaked this jar in some warm water, got a little bit warm, poured it on their waffles and their pancakes. They didn't even want to eat it. They didn't like it. That's how used to fake syrup that these young kids are. They don't even know what real syrup is. You give them real syrup, they're like, ew, what's this? It's real fucking syrup, that's what it is. It's got real stuff in it. Stuff that's a heck of a lot better for you than high fructose corn syrup is. I made them eat it, man. They didn't like me, but after I gave it to them a couple times, they actually started liking it. So it was an overall, we didn't win, actually. Unfortunately, real maple syrup's harder and harder to come by, but it's still out there. So I'm going to do periodic updates on my YouTube channel about this situation, because I think it's very important, and I want you guys to see how this turns out and some of the methods I'm using to keep these damn predators off of my back. Because I'll tell you, I cannot stand a predator. I cannot stand a predator trying to take advantage of someone's ignorance. And yes, I was ignorant for a long time. I can't say I'm ignorant any longer. But I'm not going to allow these people to walk all over me and think they can just do whatever the hell they want. That ain't happening to me no more. And if I got to drive out of my way and stand on my pulpit and start preaching to these people how screwed up they are, and the shit that they're doing to the people is completely illegitimate, unauthorized, and beyond the scope of their authority, maybe they'll understand. And maybe it's going to take someone like me or a whole bunch of people like me holding them to their strictly limited authority. They don't have the authority to fuck with the people's property unless they go through the due process of law and lawfully execute an eminent domain action, which is in the constitutions, most states. There is a right of eminent domain. Like, you can't have one person holding out, which inconveniences the mass of people, which I'm not quite sure I agree with that, but it is in the Constitution. So it is a real thing, but they have to go about it a certain way and make sure they do. Because you still have a right of due process of law, and you have the right to recuperate the value of the property that they take. They can't just take it and not give you anything. They have to give you fair market value. That's part of the due process. That's the only way they can get away with eminent domain, is because they have to pay you the price of the property. They can't rip you off. There's another thing, something that I cannot for the life of me understand, and I would like you to bleep bloop that down in the bottom of the comments of this video if you happen to be one of the people watching it. Please explain to me qualified immunity. There is no statute written. There is nothing in any state constitution or the federal constitution that I'm aware of that even addresses or authorizes qualified immunity. You know where qualified immunity comes from? Like for public servants, like police officers, when they screw up and hurt somebody, oh, they've got qualified immunity. Guess where that came from? Came from a judge. Judges even give themselves qualified immunity. Where's that come from? Them, the Bar Association, the pathetic organization known as the Bar Association. The British Accreditation Regency, or Registry, as some people put it. I don't know about you, but 1776, the Brits lost all control of this country, lawfully. Now, they may not have physically. They're still here, meddling in the background, causing problems for us. I think we should eliminate all bar associations. The city of Virginia Beach, the city I live in, has its own bar association. So does the state. Virginia, the Commonwealth, has its own bar association. It's an agency of the Supreme Court. The Bar Association is an agency of the Virginia Supreme Court, which means every bar member is an agent of the Supreme Court. And guess what? A whole bunch of our legislatures who are part of the legislative branch are also active bar members who are also agents of the judiciary, the Supreme Court. That's a direct violation of the separation of powers clause in the Virginia Constitution, yet it goes unchecked. No one questions it. How can someone hold a seat in two different branches of government? They're not supposed to be allowed to, and we the people don't question it. Well, you can bet your ass the next time I'm involved in some statute that I don't agree with, I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to do a constitutional challenge to the statute itself. And I'm going to say these statutes were derived and voted on by active bar members, which are agents of the Supreme Court, which is the seat of the judiciary branch of government of that state. members should not be allowed to be legislators. They shouldn't be allowed to be the governor. If you're an active bar member, you shouldn't be a governor. You can't be the head of the executive branch in the state and be an agent to the judiciary branch. You just can't. Separation of power doctrines strictly prevents that from happening. Yet, I bet most of the governors in all 50 states are active bar members. I know a lot of the legislatures are. Even in the federal government, they have a separation of powers in the federal Constitution. How many of these senators and representatives in the federal government are fucking attorneys, bar members, card-carrying attorneys, in good standing with the bar? Most of them. Yet they sit on the legislative branch. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. These people nobody questions this stuff. I question all of it. And until someone gets me up on a pulpit trying to take my rights from me, as long as they're leaving me alone, I don't care. They want to start fucking with me and messing with my rights or any of this, then I'm bringing all this stuff up. They're going to regret they ever messed with me. Because they don't have authority to do what they're doing. They just don't. The people didn't give them this authority. So therefore they don't have it. It's that simple. The people didn't give them the authority they're trying to assume that they have. They don't have it. They're claiming something that they don't have. I think it's fascinating. I think all of this is fascinating. And it all comes from reading. And if you just read those two things, statutory interpretation and statutory construction, it should be at the beginning of your state code. I know in Virginia it's in section 1. It's right at the beginning. Most states are probably very similar. There's certain ways the legislature has to draft and pass legislation. And it can only apply to one object or one subject. And it has to be read 3 times on the floor and voted on, and a record of the votes are recorded. All of that stuff. Well, you have to look at what the object of the legislation is, or the subject of the legislation. Because each act or bill can only apply to one object or one subject. That's why they codify it. They put it in code so it goes by the number, so it's easy to find. Codes are not law, by the way. I know in Virginia, we have the Virginia Code Commission, which isn't part of the legislature. They're contracted. It's actually a company out of Orlando, Florida. That takes all of the legislation and codifies it. It's not always exactly as the legislature has written it. So what you have to do is you have to take the acts or the bills that your legislature passed and read them, because a lot of times your codes are written a little bit different. Codes are not laws. Everybody says statutes and codes are laws. They're not. They weren't even written by the legislature. They're written by a commission. In Virginia, it's called the Code Commission or the Virginia Code Commission. These people aren't legislatures. They don't vote. They weren't elected. They're contractors. Statutes are not laws. Codes are not laws. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. I suggest you start there. It will clarify a lot of things that you may question, or you may have questioned, or you don't understand. The Constitution clarifies a lot of that stuff. So, I'm going to let y'all go for now. This video's went on for an hour. But please think about what I'm telling you, because this applies in all 50 states. I'm not making this up. I don't make up stuff. I read things. I do my damnedest to understand what I'm reading. And if I don't understand it or it doesn't make sense, I read it and research it until I understand it. And then it makes perfect sense. And then you know how to apply it. And then you know what it applies to. And then you know if or not it applies to you or the activity that you're engaged in. You must know these things. It's important. I think it's important, and I think you will as well. If you find out ways to enable yourself to be free, you are going to find a whole new world out there. You're going to look at things completely differently. You're going to actually start feeling free inside. Not from without, but from within. And you're going to know that you have the power to do something about it because you have read and understand things. The only true power is knowledge. And once you learn something, it can't be taken from you. You can be killed, you can be eliminated, but that knowledge can never be taken from you. Once you learn it and you have internalized it, nobody can take that information from you. They can't. You have that for the rest of your life. And you don't have to go to college to understand English. You don't have to go get your Juris Doctorate to learn how to read state statutes. It tells you in the statutes how to interpret them, how to read them, how they're constructed. It tells you all that in there. And one thing I tell everybody, and I harp this over and over and over and over and over again, is the fact that you must look up the definitions when you're reading these state codes. You have to. You can't assume that the words have their ordinary, everyday meanings, because they give them different definitions. And if a word is defined within a statute, and it tells you which statutes that applies to, which titles, which sections, and that has to be applied every single time that word is used within the scope that it tells you it's used and it means. And you must understand that. I'd recommend look up the word person in your state statute. That will blow your freaking mind when you find out what that word means, what they use it to mean, what it's to be interpreted as meaning. It doesn't mean anything else other than what they say it does, because that's the only thing it can apply to, not the people. You'll never see in a state statute where a person is defined as one of the people, or a man or a woman. It'll never say that because it doesn't apply there. Because your state legislature doesn't have power to dictate how the people conduct their lives in a general sense. We're the ones that give them their power. We're not going to give them power to dictate every aspect and facet of our life, are we? No, you'd be pretty much a fool to do that. Well, let me create something and then give it power over me. Who would do that in their right mind? Nobody would, not in their right mind. Following behind a Prius, nothing worse. Following behind a fucking Prius. You know what's second to a Prius? A minivan. A minivan. I do not like following behind minivans. Actually, I don't like following behind anybody. It seems like the people I get behind, they just don't care. They lollygag around and everybody in every other lane cuts in front of them. And they slow down so other people can cut in front of them. Why does that always seem to happen to me? Why do I always get behind those people? Oh, people beside them got their brake lights on, so they're going to put on their brake lights so the people beside them can get in front of them and hold us all up. Why do I always get behind them? And then I get behind the Kias with their CVT transmissions. Their Jericho transmissions that are about to go out at 40,000 miles. And their GDI engines that have so much intake valve shit because of their PCV systems that they never service properly. Man, the way they make cars nowadays are just unbelievable. Well, I'm almost home. I'm done bitching and complaining about everything. Y'all have a good day. It's a wonderful day. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I know I am. About to watch the Mexican Grand Prix today, Formula One. Haven't watched qualifying yet. My neighbor's coming over at 3 p.m. We're going to get some pizza and we're going to watch qualifying and then we're going to watch the race. It's in Mexico City, Mexico. The average elevation in Mexico City, Mexico, at the track where they're at anyway, is an average of 7,000 feet above sea level. M5, don't see too many of them. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. All right, I'm done zipping around. Y'all have a good day. Peace.